A man saves a mother elephant from a python, and what 5 elephants do next is unbelievable. The desperate trumpeting echoed across the savannah, carrying a sense of urgency that Samuel Mutai had never heard in his 15 years as a senior ranger guard at Kenya's most famous national park. The sound wasn't the typical territorial call of a bull elephant, but something more primal, a cry for help. Samuel immediately redirected his patrol jeep toward the commotion, his experienced hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. What he discovered as he crested the small rise would challenge everything he knew about predator dynamics and park intervention protocols. In a small clearing surrounded by acacia trees, a chaotic scene was unfolding. A massive African rock python had wrapped its powerful coils around a young female elephant, its muscular body constricting around her chest and neck. More astonishingly, a large male elephant, Jabari, the dominant bull of the Makali herd, recognizable by his distinctive large tusks, was frantically trying to free her, his massive feet batting at the snake while careful not to injure the struggling female. The female elephant was Nala, Jabari's favorite mate and one of the herd's primary foragers. Standing at a tense distance were 3 more female elephants and another young male, all members of the same herd, watching the life and death struggle with evident distress, but unable to effectively intervene against the powerful constrictor. Samuel's training was explicit: never interfere with natural predator interactions, no matter how dramatic. Nature's course was to be respected, even when harsh. But this situation defied conventional wildlife dynamics. Pythons rarely targeted adult elephants, typically focusing on smaller prey. This encounter was likely an unusual accident. Perhaps the female elephant had surprised the snake while foraging, triggering a defensive response that had escalated into a deadly embrace. The ranger knew that losing Nala would devastate the herd structure. She was not only Jabari's preferred mate, but also the mother of the herd's youngest calves, still dependent on her for survival. Her death could trigger a cascade of consequences, potentially including infanticide, if herd dynamics shifted too dramatically. Samuel radioed headquarters, his voice tense but controlled. "This is Ranger Mutai, a grid section E7. I've got a python attack on a female elephant from the Makali herd. The male is attempting intervention but failing, requesting permission for emergency protocol 5C. The response was immediate and negative. Negative, Ranger Mutai. Natural predator interactions are strictly non-intervention. Return to your patrol route. Samuel watched as Jabari trumpeted in frustration, his powerful tusks unable to grip the python effectively without endangering Nala further. The female elephant's struggles were weakening visibly, her eyes beginning to bulge as the snake's coils tightened around her throat. The other herd members paced anxiously, occasionally approaching before retreating from the thrashing snake. In that moment, Samuel made a career-defining decision. "I can't stand by and watch this," he muttered, switching off his radio. He grabbed his snake hook and heavy gloves from the emergency kit, tools typically used for relocating venomous snakes from tourist areas, and cautiously approached the struggle. The risk was enormous. He was placing himself between multiple apex predators, a 15-foot python, a 400-pound male elephant, and several female elephants, any of which could kill him in seconds if they perceived him as a threat. Yet something in Jabari's behavior gave him hope. The male elephant seemed to understand that the python was the primary threat, focusing entirely on freeing his mate rather than defending territory against the approaching human. "Jabari," Samuel said in a low, steady voice, using the elephant's name, though he knew the animal recognized him only as a human figure occasionally glimpsed from research vehicles. "I'm here to help." The male elephant's eyes flicked toward him briefly, but returned to the python. A response that Samuel interpreted as reluctant tolerance. Moving with deliberate calm, the ranger approached from the python's tail end opposite from Jabari's position. The snake, fully committed to its prey and now threatened by both elephant and human, constricted even tighter, causing Nala to emit a strangled gasp. Samuel knew he had seconds, not minutes, to act. Using the snake hook, he gained leverage under one of the python's coils, applying steady pressure while assessing the female elephant's condition. Her eyes were glazing over from lack of oxygen, her powerful body going limp beneath the snake's embrace. What happened next occurred with such synchronized precision that it would later seem almost choreographed when reviewed on the video Samuel's dashboard camera captured. As the Ranger pulled upward with the snake hook, creating momentary slack in one section of coils, Jabari seemed to intuitively understand the strategy. The massive elephant thrust his tusk into the small gap, forcing the coil further apart while being careful not to injure Nala with his tusk. The python, now fighting two threats from different directions, made a critical mistake. It slightly loosened its grip to reposition, attempting to strike at Samuel. That momentary relaxation was all Jabari needed. With explosive strength, he thrust his trunk between two coils and clamped his trunk around the snake's body, not to kill, but to pull, creating more space around Nala's neck and chest. Samuel maintained his leverage with the snake hook while reaching with his free hand to grab another section of the python. The snake's powerful muscles rippled beneath his gloved fingers as he pulled in tandem with Jabari's efforts. For a surreal moment, man and elephant worked in perfect coordination against a common enemy. Their movements synchronized despite being members of species that had evolved as predator and prey. The python thrashed violently as its advantage disappeared, its powerful body twisting to break free from both human and elephant. But Samuel and Jabari maintained their grip, creating enough space for Nala to gasp a desperate breath. Color returned to her dulling eyes as oxygen flowed back into her lungs. With renewed strength, she began her own struggle against the remaining coils, her powerful hind legs kicking to create additional leverage. Samuel knew they had reached the most dangerous moment. The python, realizing it was losing control of the situation, would either attempt to flee or redirect its attack toward one of its opponents. The Ranger positioned himself to keep the snake's head oriented away from both himself and the elephants, using his body weight to pin the middle section, while Jabari continued pulling at another segment. With a final coordinated effort, they created enough space for Nala to wriggle free, her live body sliding out from the python's now loosened embrace. The moment she cleared the coils, Jabari's demeanor changed instantly. His focus shifted from rescue to retribution, tusks clamping down with bone-crushing force on the python's body. Samuel recognized the danger immediately. He needed to create distance between himself and the elephants now that their temporary alliance of necessity was ending. Releasing his grip on the python, Samuel began a careful backward retreat, maintaining eye contact with Jabari while moving deliberately toward his vehicle. The male elephant acknowledged his movement with a glance, but remained focused on dispatching the snake, which was now fighting for its own survival. The other female elephants had approached Nala, inspecting her injuries while maintaining a defensive perimeter around the weakened herd member. Samuel reached his jeep and quickly climbed inside, his heart pounding against his ribcage as the full realization of what he'd just done hit him. He had violated the park's most fundamental protocol by interfering in a predator interaction. He had placed himself at extraordinary risk between a python, a male elephant, and multiple female elephants. By any rational assessment, he should be dead or severely injured. Instead, he was watching through his windshield as Jabari finished what the python had started in reverse, his powerful tusks severing the snake's spine. Grabbing his radio, Samuel knew he needed to report the incident before rumors spread among other rangers or tourists who might have witnessed the event from a distance. Headquarters, this is Ranger Mutai. I need to speak with Director Okafor immediately. Priority 1. Director Nadia Okafor's voice came through moments later, concern evident in her tone. Ranger Mutai, this is highly irregular. What's happened? Samuel took a deep breath. Director, I've intervened in a predator conflict. A python was killing one of the Makali herd female elephants. I assisted in freeing her. The situation is now contained, but I need to report a protocol violation. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. You did what? The director's voice was dangerously quiet. Your location now. Do not leave the scene. As Samuel waited for the inevitable disciplinary response, he continued observing the herd's behavior through his binoculars. What he witnessed defied everything known about elephant behavior toward humans. Nala, though wounded and weakened, had risen to her feet and was now looking directly at his vehicle. Jabari had finished killing the python and had dragged its massive body several meters away, where it would likely become a meal for the herd once the immediate crisis passed. Most remarkably, the male elephant repeatedly glanced between the dead snake and Samuel's vehicle, his posture lacking the territorial aggression elephants typically displayed toward humans outside of vehicles. The other herd members had created a protective formation around Nala, but were similarly non-aggressive toward the ranger's presence. 20 minutes later, Director Okafor's vehicle arrived, followed closely by Dr. from Mahmoud Ibrahim, the park's chief wildlife veterinarian. The director's expression was thunderous as she approached Samuel's jeep. 15 years of exemplary service, and you throw it away on a foolhardy rescue attempt, she began without preamble. Do you have any idea of the precedent this sets? The danger you've put yourself and other rangers in? Samuel nodded, accepting the rebuke. I understand the protocol violation, Director. I take full responsibility for my actions and will accept whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. The consequences will be significant, she assured him grimly. But before we discuss that, show me exactly what happened. Dr. Ibrahim needs to assess the female elephant's condition from a distance. Samuel described the encounter in detail, while Dr. Ibrahim observed the herd through high-powered binoculars. The veterinarian's usual professional detachment gave way to obvious fascination as he watched the elephant's behavior. And the male isn't displaying any territorial aggression toward our vehicles, he noted with surprise. And look at the female elephants. They're oriented protectively toward the injured female, but they're not exhibiting stress responses to our presence. It's almost as if they understand we're not threats. Director Okafor frowned. Don't anthropomorphize, Doctor. They're wild predators, not reasoning beings. With respect, Director, Dr. Ibrahim replied, what I'm observing contradicts standard behavioral patterns. This herd has recognized Ranger Mutai as an ally, not a threat or prey. That's unprecedented in documented wild elephant behavior. As they debated, Samuel noticed movement from the herd. Jabari had separated himself from the group and was approaching their vehicles, not with the stalking posture of a hunting elephant, but with the direct, purposeful gait of an elephant on his home territory. He stopped approximately 15 meters away, just beyond the distance elephants typically maintained from safari vehicles. Nobody move, Director Okafor whispered, her anger temporarily supplanted by caution. And do if he charges, start your engines, but do not drive away rapidly unless absolutely necessary. Instead of charging, Jabari did something that would later be analyzed by wildlife behaviorists around the world. He sat down, his massive body settling into the grass, and looked directly at Samuel's vehicle. Then, in a gesture that seemed impossible to misinterpret, he dipped his head slightly before rising and returning to his herd. Did he just? Dar Ibrahim began his scientific skepticism, battling with what his eyes had witnessed. Acknowledge me, Samuel finished quietly. Yes, I believe he did. Director Okafor remained silent, her expression unreadable as she processed the implications of what they had just witnessed. Finally, she turned to Samuel. Your dashboard camera, was it running? Samuel nodded. Standard protocol on all patrols. It captured everything. Good, she said decisively, because without video evidence, no one would believe this, and even with it, there will be significant debate about what actually occurred here today. The following days brought a whirlwind of activity to the usually methodical operations of Serengeti National Park. Director Okafor had convened an emergency meeting of the park's senior staff, where Samuel's dashboard camera footage was reviewed dozens of times. The video evidence was irrefutable. A human ranger and a male elephant had worked in apparent coordination to save a female elephant from a python, followed by behavior from the herd that defied conventional understanding of wild elephant responses to human presence. The scientific implications are extraordinary, Dr. Ibrahim insisted during the heated discussion. This contradicts everything we know about wild predator behavior toward humans. It suggests a level of situational reasoning and recognition that we've never documented in elephants outside of long-term captive rehabilitation scenarios. It also presents an ethical quagmire, countered Dr. Elizabeth Manji, the park's research director. If we publicize this incident, it could encourage dangerous human interventions in predator interactions throughout conservation areas worldwide. People will die trying to replicate what Ranger Mutai did. Samuel sat quietly as his career and the scientific implications of his actions were debated. He had already received a formal reprimand and 2-week suspension for violating intervention protocols, a punishment far milder than the termination he had expected. Director Okafor had been pragmatic. Firing the ranger who had participated in what might be a groundbreaking wildlife behavior incident would create more problems than it solved. "We need a controlled research response," Director Okafor finally decided. "Dr. Ibrahim will lead a specialized observation team to monitor the Makali herd for any continuing behavioral anomalies. We'll document everything but restrict access to the footage and findings until we have a comprehensive understanding of what occurred. In the meantime, all rangers will receive explicit reinforcement that the non-intervention protocol remains in full effect. Ranger Mutai's actions are not to be emulated under any circumstances." When Samuel returned from his suspension, he was reassigned to patrol the sector containing the Manali herd's territory. The official explanation was that his familiarity with the herd made him valuable to the observation study. Unofficially, everyone understood that the elephant's unusual tolerance of his presence made him the ideal observer. What unfolded over the subsequent weeks challenged fundamental assumptions about elephant cognition and behavior. Nala had recovered from her ordeal, the python's attack leaving her with scarring but no permanent physical limitations. More remarkably, the entire herd displayed unprecedented behavior when Samuel's vehicle approached. Unlike their typical response to safari vehicles, indifference or mild weariness, they showed what researchers reluctantly termed recognition. Jabari, in particular, demonstrated behavior that defied explanation. On multiple occasions, he approached Samuel's vehicle directly, maintaining eye contact before settling nearby, sometimes remaining in proximity for hours. The behavior was so consistent that Dr. Ibrahim began documenting it as selective habituation. Though privately he admitted this scientific terminology failed to capture the apparent intentionality behind the elephant's actions. "It's as if he remembers," the veterinarian confessed to Samuel during their third week of observation. "I've worked with elephants for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. He's not just tolerating your presence, he's acknowledging it specifically." The most extraordinary incident occurred approximately 1 month after the python attack. Samuel was conducting routine observations when he spotted Nala limping slightly, her movements indicating possible discomfort from a new injury. Following protocol, he reported it to Dr. Ibrahim, but took no action. The next morning, Samuel arrived at his observation post to find something unprecedented. Just 10 meters from where he typically parked, Jabari was waiting. Beside the male elephant lay a freshly killed gazelle not yet eaten. As Samuel watched in astonishment, Jabari made eye contact, then deliberately backed away from the kill, maintaining his gaze on the vehicle. When Dr. Ibrahim arrived an hour later, having been summoned by Samuel's urgent but cryptic radio call, he witnessed the scene with scientific disbelief. "He's offering you a gift," the veterinarian whispered. "A thank you or perhaps a reciprocal gesture of assistance since his mate appears injured." "What should I do?" Samuel asked, equally stunned by the implications. After a lengthy consultation with Director Okafor via satellite phone, a plan was formulated with extensive safety precautions. Dr. Ibrahim prepared antibiotics for Nala's infected wound, likely sustained during a recent forage. Using a remote darting system from Samuel's vehicle, they sedated the female elephant while Jabari and the herd watched from a distance that was close by elephant standards, but maintained a minimal safety margin. The treatment was quick and efficient, with Dr. Ibrahim working with practiced precision to clean and medicate the infected area before administering the sedative reversal agent. Throughout the procedure, Jabari remained watchful, but made no move to interfere, his behavior suggesting what researchers could only interpret as trust, a concept previously considered inapplicable to wild elephant-human interactions. As the weeks passed, the Makali herd's unique relationship with Samuel became both a scientific treasure trove and a closely guarded park secret. Limited footage was shared with select primatologists, comparative cognition experts, and big cat specialists worldwide, generating heated debate about the implications for our understanding of predator intelligence and behavior. 6 months after the python incident, the International Journal of Wildlife Behavior published a landmark paper, "Possible Reciprocal Altruism and Recognition Behaviors Observed in Wild Elephants Following Human Intervention Event." The carefully worded study presented the observations without anthropomorphizing the elephant's behavior. Yet the implications were clear. These predators had demonstrated cognitive and social capabilities previously unrecognized in wild populations. For Samuel Mutai, the scientific debate was secondary to the daily reality of his evolving relationship with the Macali herd. He maintained strict adherence to safety protocols and never exited his vehicle in their presence. Yet the connection that had formed that day with Jabari had fundamentally changed his understanding of the creatures he had dedicated his life to protecting. On the one-year anniversary of the python incident, Samuel was conducting routine observations when Jabari approached his vehicle accompanied by Nala and two small calves, her newest litter. The male elephant settled just 8 meters away, the closest he had ever voluntarily positioned himself. The calves, curious but cautious, watched from behind their mother as Jabari gazed steadily at the human who had once reached across the species divide to become, however briefly, an ally rather than a threat. "I see you, old friend," Samuel said quietly, though he knew the elephant couldn't understand his words. "Thank you for changing how we see you too." The incident ultimately transformed the park's approach to predator research, establishing new protocols for observing and documenting complex behaviors previously dismissed as anthropomorphic projection. While the strict non-intervention policy remained in place, a deeper appreciation emerged for the cognitive capabilities of the park's apex predators. The Macali herd continued to thrive under Jabari's leadership, their territory expanding to include some of the richest foraging grounds in the eastern Serengeti. And while safari vehicles came and went, photographing the elephants from a respectful distance, only one Green Ranger Jeep was ever permitted to approach within Jabari's inner comfort zone, a unique privilege granted to a human who had once made the extraordinary choice to reach across the boundaries of species to save a life, and in doing so had revealed something profound about the creatures with whom we share this planet.